Good morning where I am. You might be watching this in the afternoon or in the evening some of the time. So I'll just say good whatever time of day it is. My name is Brent Morris with Catholic Charities, and this is our ongoing series called Where to Turn. Today we're going to be looking at spring cleaning. Now today as I'm doing this, it's snowing outside and it's kind of cold and rainy. But typically during spring, this is recorded on April the 20th, there's spring cleaning is one of the things we do. Or we take a time to kind of look at what's all stored in our garage or in our attic or in our shed outside, and we try to clean out those things that we don't need anymore. We might be using something like this if we want to make sure that we're clean after everything, so we're going to do that. Today we're going to look at how that relates to job search. Say job search, well that doesn't make much sense. Well, let's think about that in just a second. For a lot of us, we are looking at different jobs. We're looking at trying to do different things as the pandemic has caused us to either lose our job or has caused us to lose hours, or maybe it's just caused us to say, I need something different. I need to try a new track in my life. I need to try something different. Well, that's kind of to start that, we need to spring clean some of the things that we're holding on to. The first of those is we need to let go of the failures of the past. So many people I talk to about job search say they want to try a job or they want to look for a job that they've had before. And as I talk to them more about that, and you may fall into this category, as I talk to them more about it, they don't really want to do that job anymore. They only said that when I asked the question because that's what they have experience with. But they really want to try something else. We got to be willing to let go of the failures of the past, to say that's behind us, and I'm ready to start something new if that's what we want. If you want to do something new, now is a good time for that. It's kind of a time almost of a reset for people. You say, well, I used to do, just for example, I used to do a warehouse job, and I did a warehouse job, and I was good at it, and I learned it, but I've always really wanted to try being a salesman. That's, again, just an example. And so this is a good time to try that. A lot of people are creating jobs. Things are really popping up right now. Unemployment, you might have seen last week, is at its lowest rate in the last 13 months. And so people are offering jobs. They're starting new positions. And if you were in a position you didn't want before, now's a great time to go for another one. All right, so that's something you cleaned out. Maybe you get some paper towels out and it's time for you to clean something else off. What is that? Well, it might be your resume. Your resume might need some polishing, might need to be updated. It might need, in fact, to be done new altogether. A lot of folks haven't looked at their resume since the last time they looked for work. And for some of us, that might have been several years. Well, your resume is no longer reflective of what you've done. So get your resume out. If you don't have a resume, it's a great time to think about putting one down on paper. A lot of people will tell me when they come in, they might have had a job for a long time. They've worked in a certain field for a long time. And then for whatever reason, that's fallen through for them. That no longer is what they're doing, or they can't do that physically, perhaps. Well, that's a great time then to have a resume that shows what you've done so that somebody else doesn't have to filter through all that, but it's right there on paper for them. A good resume has a couple of different features that we want to talk about. It does list what you've done before, but it doesn't just list that. It also lists what skills you have, what abilities you have, and what your goal is. What do you want to do with the job? Now, sometimes people get a little too flowery on resumes. They get a little too wordy. They try to impress people by using big words or using phrases they think are hot phrases like, I'm going to be dynamic, I'm going to be this and that. And there's nothing totally wrong with that. But I'll say this, just be honest on the resume with what you want, with what you really want to do, and with what value you bring to the company. Remember, if I'm an employer and I'm reading that resume, I'm reading it wanting to know what the company will benefit by bringing you on. How will the company benefit? It's great that you will benefit from whatever the position is, and that you will be enriched in your life. That's good. But frankly, that's not my goal as an employer. My goal as an employer is to benefit the company. So on the resume, talk about how you're going to benefit the company. What value and what skills do you bring that will benefit the company? And then again, talking about what you've done, make those brief statements of what you've done. Because as the interview goes on, there'll be more questions about what you've done. There'll be more questions specifically about the tasks that you have done, the projects you've worked on, the abilities that you have, how you've shown those things. So don't try to put all of that on the resume. Do a little blurb about where you've worked and a sentence or two, not more than that, about what you've done. And then education. If you've been out of school for 25 years, I wouldn't go into great detail about your schooling because again, just one line that talks about what you've done. That's something that, again, if they want to ask you more questions about that, they will, but you really just want to get the plain data out about what you've done. I've seen resumes that were 3 or 4 pages long for people who have worked 5 years on various jobs. And if you worked a job for a month, worked a job for a couple of days at a temporary service, don't put those jobs down. Don't list every little job you've done. List that you work for a temporary service and did various things, and if it applies to that job that you're there for, you can mention that in the interview. So your resume may be one of those things that needs to be polished up. It may need to be changed altogether. And if you've never had a resume, then in today's world, you really need one. If you go to look for jobs of almost any kind, a lot of them want a resume. They want you to submit a resume online with an application. And the great thing about resumes and the computer is once you put it on let's say you put it on LinkedIn or on Indeed or any of those major services, then you don't have to put it on one time. You don't have to keep going back and redoing it. So there is work involved in doing it the first time, but then you're kind of done with it. Okay. What else is there? There may be a need for you to get one of these wipes out, and you got to really wipe something off, and that might be grief over what you have lost. This is something we don't talk about very much. It's kind of in the clouds a little bit, but it's certainly real. It is certainly real. Several people I've talked to, especially since the pandemic hit, have grief over what they've lost, and they haven't really taken the time to properly think about that in that way. If you had a really good job, your situation was very comfortable for you, and now that's all been thrown out, you're not comfortable anymore, then you're grieving that. Emotionally, that's something you have to deal with. And that's something, again, I don't want to try to act like I'm talking about counseling situation, but it is something you have to sit down and really think about for a second. Think about for a few minutes a day if you need to, and then let that go, because whatever has happened. We can't. There's no magic that we go back and change it all. You have to grieve that, and then the important part is to let that go and move forward. When we lose a loved one, it's terrible. We have sadness and sorrow, but eventually we move past that and we move on with life. The same thing about your job or maybe a situation that you had that was changed by the pandemic. And I'm not talking about losing a loved one. Obviously, that's tragic, and that's a whole different kind of grieving that I'm talking about. But if you've lost a job, you've lost a situation that you enjoyed because of that, and now it's not coming back. A lot of people obviously close their doors as businesses. And while there's jobs coming back, it's not those jobs because those businesses have closed. Take time to grieve it and then move on. That's part of the spring cleaning of moving your life forward, right? And then the last thing is to look at your skills and take an honest look about what skills you've kind of relied on in the past and whether those are still things you need to emphasize. a lot of times people want to emphasize their hard skills. In other words, what I mean by that is that they know how to weld, they know how to use their computer, they know how to write code or whatever that is that they know how to do. Maybe you know how to teach. Maybe you know how to operate a forklift, whatever that is. And that's good, that's great. But in a survey in St. Joseph, Missouri, which is just north of Kansas City, in 2017, so this is pretty recently. It actually was done in 2018, but it was looking back at the year 2017. They asked 100 top employers in St. Joseph, why did you let somebody go? Why did you fire somebody? And the top 3 reasons, and I don't think they'd be a lot different today if we asked people, was work ethic. Second was communication skills. They didn't have good communication skills. And third was they were not a good team player. All 3 of those are what we call transferable skills. They're not about whether or not you could weld correctly, not about whether or not you knew how to operate the computer correctly. It's about showing up on time. It's about listening and doing what you're asked to do instead of arguing all the time. And it's about playing together well with others, working as a team. Those were the top 3 things that employers said got in the way of people continuing to be successful in their career. So maybe in your spring cleaning, you need to take a look and say, wait a minute, I can do those 3 things. Those are things I'm good at. I'm good as a team player. I'm a good communicator. I listen. You know, people a lot of times say they're a good communicator because they talk a lot. But part of communication is also listening. And so that's something that we want to make sure we're able to do too. And then the most important one, really, we say, what's the most important ability? The most important ability is availability. And you being there, showing up on time. There's an old saying that says half of life is just showing up. And it's so true as far as employment goes. If you make a mistake on your job, I, as an employer, can retrain you on that. I can correct that mistake and move forward if you're there every day. If you're there for me to correct it. If you're not there, it really doesn't matter how good you are on the job. You might be the best, again, we just, some of my sticks seem stuck on welding somehow, but you might be the best welder out there. But if you don't show up for the job, it doesn't bring value to my company. Remember, reaching back to a previous thing we were talking about before, what value do you bring to the company? Well, the value you must bring to the company, the basic bedrock value you have to bring is being there every day, being available every day. So see, our time's just about up, but that's what we want to do every day. Show up and show up on time. And obviously, if we can't get there on time, call and let people know why. But this is something, again, that as we look at the spring cleaning, as we look at kind of getting rid of some things we don't need, there may be some things that are holding us back. And okay, we've talked about getting rid of those. Now let's move forward in a positive attitude, in a positive way that we are going to succeed. You, point the right way here, you are going to succeed. Not because I say so, but because you're going to take the information in this, you're going to take the skills that you have, and you're going to show those to other people who need those skills. All right, our time's about up. As I said, we will see you again next week at the same time. Thank you.